watching the 5th edition of the Potent News Blast on the 21st of April 2012. I'm Amir Alwani, and I'm going to be blasting through a bunch of stories for you today. But before I do that, I'm just going to give you guys a couple tips for the truth community and any researchers in general. One of them relates to Firefox, Mozilla Firefox, the website browser, and the other one relates to how to get RSS feeds on gadgets on your desktop if you're using Windows. So here's the tips. Alright, so this is the collusion add-on that Jason Burmis had mentioned on the Intel Hub news brief not too long ago. You can pause the video and read about it right here on the left. I apologize if you already got to what I'm about to show you, and if you already mentioned that. But this is just too cool. I have to mention this, the tab groups button. Now, if you don't see this up here already, you can just right-click on any gray area here and go to Customize, and it'll be here, and you can just drag it over there. Once it's over there, you can click it, and see how I have all my different websites here. You can click that tab groups button, and it'll make them all small like that, and you can drag it around like so. You can call this something. You can call it main if you want. Add these very useful labels. And you can drag whatever you want to drag wherever you want. So let's call this add-on. And if you want to start a brand new one, you just click it and drag it like that. And it'll, you could call it whatever you want. And then once you click on it, it'll automatically open a new tab for you. And even, let's say I by accident close all these, I can click this again, the undo close group, to get back to it. However, you should note that if you already open another window while you do that, then this undo thing will be gone. So you'll want to keep that in mind. Alright, so as you can see here, I got all these RSS feeds up. RSS stands for Really Simple Syndication. Some of them are more of a priority than others. I got the ones that are transparent, being podcasts and audio stuff. The rest is articles. If you click on this, or any given one, it'll show you either the entire article with all the pictures and everything, or it'll show you a preview, or it'll just show the link. At any rate, you can click the link and it'll bring you to the actual article through a website or through your web browser. Now, here's how you can get that. You right-click on the desktop, you click on Gadgets, you drag this Feed Headlines one over here, then you close this. Then you can make this big or small, and then you click the wrench, and from here, where it says display this feed, you can choose which website you want it to display. And you could choose whether it shows the last 100 stories from that website or the last 10. I typically like 10. So, if you're wondering how to choose which website gets fed into here, the only way I know how to do this is through Internet Explorer, unfortunately. And I don't like Bill Gates. I think he's a eugenicist. I think he's evil. And I just don't trust the guy. I see him pushing genetically modified foods on the third world, and I see that as just a way to kill them. And I see him genetically modifying mosquitoes to be able to inject us with vaccines against our will. So I don't trust the guy. But for the time being, I'm using Windows 7, and here's how you can utilize this operating system to bring you the news in the most organized fashion, I think. So what you would do is, let's say you go to a new website. Let's say you go to nilebowie.blogspot.ca, and typically with Internet Explorer, it'll automatically detect if the website supports this RSS, or the Really Simple Syndication. It'll show up here. Feeds provide updated website content, it says, and you can click on this arrow and either click Atom or RSS, and sometimes it'll show comments. I don't know what Atom is, and so I just go with the RSS. Now, another way to get to this is if you see this kind of button on the actual website, or if not the button, then if you just scroll down and look for something like this: subscribe to posts Atom. Now, when I click on this, I'll probably get to the same thing that I will get to if I click on this, where it says RSS or Atom. Again, I don't know what Atom is. I click RSS, and then it brings me here. This seems to be a different way that the website is formatted. Now, every time you go to a website and you go to subscribe to its RSS, this is the format that it's going to look like. You press subscribe to this feed up here, and then you call it whatever you want. You press subscribe, and then all of a sudden it shows up on that list that I was mentioning earlier. Niall Bowie. Press OK, and now you got Niall Bowie on your desktop permanently. Okay, so isn't that pretty cool? I think it's pretty cool. Alright, so that about does it for the tips. I'll get right into the news right now. The first story comes from stopthedrugwar.org. It's by Philip Smith, written April 12, 2012. It's called Report Calls for Safe Injection Sites in Toronto, Ottawa. A long-awaited report from Canadian researchers is recommending that Toronto could use 3 supervised drug injection sites and Ottawa could use 2. The report said the sites would be a good healthcare investment, would reduce drug use, and would reduce the rate of new HIV and hepatitis C infections. The study, the Toronto and Ottawa Supervised Consumption Assessment, TOSCA in brackets, did not make specific location recommendations for the sites, saying that should be left up to the cities themselves should they decide to follow the recommendations. Supervised injection facilities in Toronto have the potential to offer meaningful improvements for the health of people who use drugs, said the study's co-principal investigator Dr. Ahmed Bayoumi from the Center for Research on Inner City Health at St. Michael's Hospital. Quote, the facilities could also make neighborhoods where drug use is common more livable, end quote. But within hours after the study was released, some Toronto elected officials were expressing hesitation. Deputy Mayor Doug Holliday told the Toronto Star local official need to see all the facts and figures behind this study before they decide to approve a safe injection site. Quote, I have some doubts as to whether or not there is real benefit and whether or not you don't just attract more problems, so I would like to really get the thorough results of other places that have done this, and I'd like to hear from other experts on the matter, he said. There has not been enough research done on the topic in Toronto. Whether that is the way to go with Toronto, echoed Councillor John Fillion, chair of the city's Board of Health, which will consider TOSCA's recommendations. Toronto Police Chief Bill Blair told reporters late Wednesday that he opposes supervised injection sites, a stance that TOSCA noted in its report. Quote, my concern is there need to be sufficient assurances within the community that the quality of life will not be put in jeopardy, Blair said. But not everyone at City Hall was so hesitant. There is already ample evidence of the benefits of supervised injection sites, Councillor Gord Perks, chair of the Toronto Drug Strategy Implementation Task Force, told The Star. Quote, we have today in front of us research that shows there are lives to be saved, money to be saved, and neighborhoods to be improved, said Perks. Quote, when you have differing views, you go to the evidence, and the evidence is clear. Supervised injection sites save money, save lives, and improve the quality of our neighborhoods, end quote. The province of Ontario, Toronto's a city, said it was open to evidence, but had no immediate plans to move forward. Quote, we are always prepared to listen to good advice, and we make our decisions based on evidence, Health Minister Deb Matthews said in a written statement Wednesday. Quote, experts continue to be divided on the value of the sites. We have no plans to pursue supervised sites at this time, end quote. Canada's only operating supervised injection site is Insight in Vancouver. It is operating under an exemption from Canada's drug laws, much to the chagrin of the Conservative National Government. Any future supervised injection sites would have to win similar exemptions. But at this point, worrying about that seems premature. Toronto, Ontario, Canada. All right, so I have a lot to say on the topic of drugs in general, and I wrote about it in an article titled "It is Time to Legalize All Drugs," and I'm going to link that for you in the show notes here. All right, this next article comes to us from endthelie.com. It's by Madison Rupert, and it's titled "CrimePush: Yet Another Citizen Spy Application for Smartphones," and I believe this one came out on March 6, 2012. It begins with, recently I reported on the concerted effort to bring citizen spying into the digital age with applications on smartphones which can be used to report quote-unquote suspicious activity to local Homeland Security fusion centers. This has expanded even more thanks to the hard work of individuals like 25-year-old Eamon Palevani, a student at the University of New Hampshire School of Law. Oh, thank you, E-Man. You've helped all of us so much. You've helped us catch terrorists that are under every bed. Thank you. Palavani launched an application last month called CrimePush after several months of development with his brother and friend. The application allows users to send in reports in the form of text, pictures, or video directly to law enforcement after police dispatch centers set up their accounts with CrimePush. After the dispatchers have registered, users of Android-based devices and Apple iPhones within the given area are able to download the application dedicated to that location and start sending in tips no matter how erroneous. Interestingly, Palavani claims that at least one county in every single state in the United States had expressed interest in using the application in just the first 3 weeks after launching it. Ooh, big surprise. He said that he has been getting a great deal of support from his professors, saying, quote, "They've all given me a lot of feedback of it's going to be a game changer for people who want to report crime and get information to police," end quote. While this might be true, it's also going to be a game changer for police officers who are inundated by false reports, misleading information, maliciously submitted reports, and so on. You know, I have to stop the article right there and just say a little story about my girlfriend's old roommate. Her old roommate had this dog that she kept in a cage. I mean, it was a big dog. It was a small cage. The dog couldn't move around much in it. And with no food or water, sometimes for 12 hours on end while this sorry excuse for a human being went to work. And sometimes she would even forget to open the curtains for the poor guy and let in some sunlight. So he's just starving in the dark for 12 hours, barely able. So eventually, after this dog starts shitting all over the house for weeks, the girl doesn't get the hint that the dog's unhappy. Then the dog pisses on her bed, and she accuses me of pissing on her bed. And she calls the cops on me and says, "It's my birthday right now. I don't really feel like dealing with it, actually. It's my birthday. Like, nobody gives a flying fuck that it's your stupid birthday, you dumb bitch." That's how I think of it. And I think around that time I had read that I had read statistics that showed that more people were calling police officers and calling the police for these kinds of retarded reasons. Okay, so and I gotta say, the few times that I did call the police, I don't know if I'll ever do it again. But the few times that I did, I really got the feeling that they were fed up with the general population. So it wouldn't be a surprise that people are calling them in that much for stupid shit. So there you have it. All right, now getting back to the article here, in a question and answer session with the Concord Monitor out of Concord, New Hampshire, Palavani revealed that he decided to turn his idea into a mobile application to appeal to young people, or as he put it, this generation growing up with Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. "We thought this would be a good way to open up lines of communication between the younger generation and police authorities," end quote. It's also a great way to condition people into reporting every little thing to police, especially when the federal government classifies just about everything as an indicator of possible terrorism. And they really do. I remember hearing a while back that if you look like a nice guy, you're considered a terrorist. It's more and more sounding like a joke every day. Palavani said that users are able to choose from 9 kinds of crime in the app when submitting their crime report, although it is unclear what these categories are in the article. However, I was able to locate a screenshot from the application shown above, which shows the following categories: theft, threat, altercation, sexual abuse, medical, accident, vandalism, drugs and harassment. He told the local news outlet that the police and sheriffs across the nation have been requesting that they be integrated and that they have been customizing the application for every county that has expressed interest. Palavani boasted that 300 to 500 counties across America are trying to get integrated with them right now, but he did not say how many counties are already integrated into the system. He said that while he is offering this to counties for free for now, this is going to become a for-profit endeavor. After they get enough counties and police districts involved in using the application, he plans on forcing them to pay a licensing fee of $1,000 per county, or $1,000 per year per county, something which he claims is an extremely nominal fee. Sure, it might be nominal if one county was using it, but when you consider the fact that there are 3,141 total counties and statistically equivalent entities in the United States as of January 1st, 1990, the quote extremely nominal fee end quote starts to add up, although it would remain free for users. Obviously, this is not being done purely out of the kindness of their hearts, as evidenced by an advertisement, screenshot here, in case it is removed, for a vice president of business development offering $65,000 to $85,000 first-year commissions. It gets even more interesting when he brings up the possibilities that these could be used in schools, further criminalizing our children and making the public education system an even more efficient school-to-prison pipeline. Quote, we are working right now with high schools and middle schools because superintendents in different counties and principals want to use this with students between periods, Palivani said. So if they go from class to class and they see a fight or they see a drug deal, they can just send it directly to school authorities. All of this is just intended to encourage what some might call snitching, which I prefer to call voluntary citizen spying. The most absurd part is that there is no incentive given to the users other than the good feeling they might get from reporting what they think might be criminal activity to the quote-unquote authorities. Furthermore, this is a massive waste of police time and resources. People could report their unfriendly neighbor or their ex-mate with whom they had a less than amicable breakup in order to have the police kick down their door and hassle them. I do not see any real reason for the applications like this to exist. If there is an emergency or an actual crime, it would be much faster and more efficient to just call 911 directly rather than opening an application, choosing a type of crime, typing some report out or snapping a picture. And I gotta agree, I mean, computers crash all the time. I have never owned a smartphone, but I imagine as they get more complicated, they're more likely to crash. Hopefully young people won't be silly enough to snatch this up and start accepting this type of society just because it's a cool application on their shiny new iPhone or Android device. Did I miss something? Want to share your view or tip me off to a story? You can even send me your original works to be published. Email me at admin@endthelie.com. Next story comes to us from naturalsociety.com. It's by Mike Barrett. It's called Cellphone Radiation Detector App Banned by Apple. It was written April 11th, 2012. Although many individuals think nothing of radiation emitted by cell phones or even believe it to be true, there's a large amount of evidence showing how damaging cell phone use can be. In response to the released information and growing fear of cell phone radiation, a company has ironically released a mobile app which reportedly measures radiation levels emitted by smartphones. Company creates radiation detector app. Apple bans it from App Store. The app was created by an Israeli company named Taucon, and while not necessarily brand new, is relatively unknown. The lack of popularity probably has much to do with Apple's banning of the app from their online app store, since Apple rules the smartphone market. The company instituted the ban because it felt the app would be confusing to customers, though the ban was likely due to the fact that the app could only decrease sales for Apple's iPhone. Whether Apple's decision was driven by profit or not, there are some valid questions and concerns regarding the app's accuracy. Using a complex proprietary algorithm, Taucon estimates the amount of radiation emitted by cell phones at any given moment. As a way to measure the amount of radiation being emitted and ultimately picked up by the user, the company considers factors like current antenna strength and whether a headset is being used or speakerphone is currently selected. The problem, however, is that the app depends on radiation baseline figures provided by device manufacturers. The app itself has no way of actually measuring radiation emissions, so it must rely on the publicly posted radiation emissions quotes or emission quotes by manufacturers in order to estimate a device's radiation output at all times. Even if the app does rely on figures from manufacturers, the creation of the app is a step in the right direction. Cell phone use has been shown to cause numerous problems and health complications by altering important regions of the brain. I mean, I've even heard that it actually increases the temperature of your brain on the side that you're talking with the cell phone on by like 1 or 2 degrees. I don't know if that's Celsius or Fahrenheit, but anyway, that's pretty crazy. And also, when I used to have a cell phone and I spoke on the phone for about an hour or so, I did sort of have a headache on the same side of my head that I was speaking on the cell phone with, you know. So, moving on, consequences ranging from a negative influence on fetal brains to the downfall of biological systems of birds, insects, and humans has been pinpointed as a result of these devices and their respective towers, in brackets cell towers. What's most concerning, though, is the impact they have on young, developing minds and bodies. Tons of evidence shows why children should not be using cell phones. Although completely limiting exposure is nearly impossible, taking steps to avoid exposure to cell phone radiation is important. Simply talking on your cell phone less will result in less radiation exposure. Even placing your cell phone far away from you instead of in your pocket at all times limits exposure. You may also consider investing in an EMF protector or other similar technologies that limit exposure. About keeping it in your pocket at all times, I kept it in my pocket a lot when I used to have a cell phone. I haven't had one in years because I don't want to be tracked and I don't like the radiation. But when I did have it, I noticed that even at times when the cell phone was not in my pocket, I would feel a little vibration on my skin, on my leg, as if someone was trying to call me, the same exact vibration. It was like a vibration hallucination or something. So there you have it. That's pretty weird. Now this next story comes from RT, but I saw it on the intelhub.com. But it comes from Russia Today on April 20th, 2012. I guess that's yesterday. It's called Coupe Snoop. Congress wants all cars to be equipped with recording devices. And just before I even go on with this story, I just want to say that my father came and visited me recently, and he had a rental car, and I noticed inside the rental car there was a camera right in the middle, right at the top, you know, where you'd go to push your lights. There was a camera very clearly there. I mean, I'll show you the pictures. You tell me if that looks like a camera to you. So that looks like a camera to me, and it's not surprising considering that when I go on the bus, and I've written about this before, when I go on the bus, if you just turn to the right as you enter the bus, you'll see a sticker that says that audio may be recorded on this bus for your safety. And I've asked so many people that I've met in the past year and a half about this, and tried to tell them that this is happening on the bus, and 99 out of 100 people will say no. This is news to them. I mean, I find that ridiculous because the sticker is meant for you. It's not meant for the bus driver. It's clearly for the person to see right when they enter the bus. You turn your head right and you see it. For the record, this does not make me feel safer. I do not feel safer knowing that my out-of-control criminal government, that the Canadian government wants to lock us up for 3 days without charging us with any crime. So it doesn't make me feel safe that this government that wants to engage in this type of vicious activity and just locking people up without telling them why they're locking them up, I wouldn't trust them to look after my safety. So when they put this thing on the bus saying we're recording this for your safety, I think, well, you already have cameras all over the bus. Isn't that enough? Why do you have to have this? Don't you have facial recognition technology that was used at the G20 in conjunction with Facebook? I mean, come on. So, with all that in mind, I'm going to start off this article here. The one that was called Coupe, Snoop, Congress wants all cars to be equipped with recording devices. Again, it was from RT. The federal government is about to become the country's worst backseat driver. Congress wants to put tracking devices in the car of every American, and that's not even the scariest provision in a new bill being passed around Washington. The U.S. Senate has already signed off on a new legislation that, if cleared by the rest of Congress, will see to it that the government gets its eyes and ears inside every automobile in the country. See, as far as I'm concerned, they already have their eyes in there with this camera here that I just saw. Anyway, that's Canada though. Senate Bill 1813 calls for the installation of mandatory recorders and communication devices in Americans' cars that could connect the whereabouts and actions of the country's drivers with whomever the government wants to grant access to. It doesn't stop there, though. Another provision in the proposed bill will give the government the power to revoke passports from Americans behind on their taxes, essentially making it impossible for the indebted to escape the country. It's being touted around the Capitol as the Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century Act, or MAP 21. And Congress is considering it under the explanation that the bill will, quote, reauthorize federal aid, highway, and highway safety construction programs. That they have those Viper teams that are all over the highways that are just radiating everybody. So they don't really care about highway safety as far as I'm concerned. Moving on, in the abstract drafted on Capitol Hill, however, the act is described as having provisions necessary, quote, for other purposes, end quote. And while no lawmaker explicitly explain the benefits of some questionable content within MAP 21 or MAP 21, what the government could get away with if the bill is passed is something eerily Orwellian. Yes, very Orwellian. Very, 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 very. Extremely Orwellian. If you're not scared yet, then here is another eye-opener. The U.S. Senate has already approved the bill by an overwhelming vote of 74 to 22, leaving only the House of Representatives to vote in favor before government-sanctioned black boxes become as common as carburetors and calibrated friction brakes. At this rate, it won't be long before every Beetle and Buick in the country is being tracked by Big Brother. Section 53006 of MAP 21 calls for a, quote, vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-infrastructure communications systems deployed in the country's cars in the near future. A copy of the bill is available online, but it isn't until the bottom of the text that things start to get creepy. That section calls on several congressional committees, including the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation of the Senate and the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure of the House of Representatives, to hear in 3 years' time arguments in favor of the deployment of the communications system in question. At that point, a designated person will be asked to recommend an, quote, implementation path for dedicated short-range communications technology and applications, which includes guidance on the relationship of the proposed deployment of dedicated short-range communications to the national ITS architecture and ITS standards, end quote. Sending shortwave signals to other automobiles and data hubs is one thing, but the Act is also asking for mandatory event data recorders in every car. That's the actual name, in fact, of what Congress says they want every car to have in the near future. Quote, not later than 180 days after the date of enactment of this act, the Secretary shall revise Part 563 of Title 49 Code of Federal Regulations to require, beginning with model year 2015, that new passenger motor vehicles sold in the United States be equipped with an event data recorder that meets the requirements under that part, end quote, explains the Act. The section goes on to establish that the ownership of data collected by those devices will be the sole property of the owner of the automobile, but the provisions clearly authorize a challenge to this. A court may be granted access to that information, quote, in furtherance of a legal proceeding, end quote. And elsewhere in the bill, it says that quote, the information is retrieved pursuant to an investigation or inspection authorized under Section 1131A or 30166 of Title 49 United States Code, end quote. 2 years after those devices are made mandatory, Congress will also hear a report that will explain, quote, the recommendations on what, if any, additional data the event data recorder should be modified to record. You hear that, people? They want as much of your information as possible. It's not enough that they're tracking you by your cell phone and you have that in your car already, probably. They want every little piece of information about you that they can possibly get their dirty little hands on. Moving on. Those without driver's licenses won't be spared from civil liberty infringement if MAP 21 makes it out of the White House with Obama's approval. Another section says that Congress can confiscate the passports of Americans delinquent in paying their taxes. Although the U.S. was built from the ground up by refugees escaping persecution, persons plagued by hardships in the near future won't be afforded that same ability to escape Uncle Sam's strengthening stranglehold. Under Section 40304, the United States State Department is also allowed the powers to revoke passports from anyone determined by the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, of having, quote, a delinquent tax debt in an amount in excess of $50,000, end quote. 50 grand might seem like a big number for 99%ers, but it isn't all that outrageous or uncommon. After all, the Washington Post reported in 2010 that out of the 18,000 employees on Capitol Hill, 638 of them were behind on their taxes. What's more, though, is that of those working within the House of Representatives, the average delinquent was indebted to the country to the tune of $15,498. If you're on the federal payroll and you're not paying your taxes, you should be fired. Republican Jason Chaffetz of Utah exclaimed at the time. 2 years down the road, though, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, Democrat Nevada, is requesting that a citizen's ability to travel abroad be brought to an end for being behind on their taxes. Reid was the author of Section 40304 and is presumably outside of the 4% of congressional staffers that owed the feds in 2010. But opponents of the act are saying that stripping passports from poor Americans isn't a provision that is necessary for MAP 21. Quote, it takes away your right to enter or exit the country based upon a non-judicial IRS determination that you owe taxes. Constitutional attorney Angle Reyes tells Fox Business. Quote, it's a scary thought that our congressional representatives want to give the IRS the power to detain U.S. citizens over taxes, which could very well be in dispute. There are so many people that fall into... end quote. There's another quote. There are so many people that fall into that situation, and I think that's too invasive, especially coming out of a bad economy. There are a lot of people behind on a lot of things, adds financial advisor Clark Hodges to Fox. There are other damning provisions in MAP 21, including a Stop Tax Haven Abuse section that says the government can kick any foreign jurisdiction out of the U.S. financial system if it wants to. For American residents up to date on their income taxes and not invested abroad, however, the real dangers lie within the very real possibility that the government will soon be able to track every single automobile on the nation's roads. Earlier this year, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that law enforcement requires a warrant if they want to install GPS tracking devices on the cars of suspected criminals, but with that decision quickly collecting opposition, a loophole might have just been brought to light by forcing consumers to purchase cars with tracking systems already installed. Before the Supreme Court shot down the feds' plea to allow unwarranted monitoring of automobiles in January, Justice Stephen Breyer said that a decision to not do so would be dangerous for everyone in the country. Quote, if you win this case, then there is nothing to prevent the police or the government from monitoring 24 hours a day the public movement of every citizen of the United States. So if you win, you suddenly produce what sounds like 1984, explained Breyer. Yeah, man, this is 1984, and a lot of people these days would probably argue that we're beyond 1984 now. So there you have it. This is truly insane. It's truly nuts. And I would appreciate it if you know I could get a visit from my dad and there was not a camera in his car looking at me. You know, I would just appreciate that. It would just be it would just be kind of nice. It's already bad enough to have it on the buses, on every street corner almost. Like, come on, man. God. All right, the next couple stories are related because the first one is a little older. It's from February 29th, 2012, and it's called 4656 Fairfax. California adopts resolution declaring the town a chemtrail-free zone. But what? I thought the chemtrails don't exist. Yeah, so how the fuck can you say that now when there's a law that's banning the chemtrails, huh? I mean, the UN already admitted to the geo-engineering operations, but now you have this law banning this crap. And by the way, this story appears on aircrap.org. Monitoring the planned poisoning of humanity. Aircrap.org. Go there. I'm just going to read this, and then I'll show you the second article that relates. Starts off, if chemtrails are a hoax or a conspiracy, then it's pulling in a lot of credible people. On January 11th, 2012, the Fairfax City Council adopted resolution number 12-07, quote, a resolution on the town Council of Fairfax declaring Fairfax a chemtrail-free zone. Understand, this is an insistence of an American city government weighing in on the subject of chemtrails, acknowledging their existence and letting it be known that they don't want spraying over their city. This is not made up. You can see their resolution on their website. And of course, I'm going to link all the stories I talk about here on the show notes, and you can go ahead and go click on that and see the actual law. One of the main problems with calling chemtrails a hoax or conspiracy is the fact that whatever those planes are doing, they aren't trying to hide it. The planes are always spotted in broad daylight and most typically on very clear sunny days. It's not like UFOs flying under the cover of night, darting in and out of airspace. That's a good point. Mobile Tribune understands there are people in this world who are ill with a disease we call GCS, or Government Conspiracy Syndrome. They think the government is out to get citizens and spend most of their waking hours investigating reports of such. However, just because there are such people does not mean there cannot be instances of government or private enterprise secrecy in regard to these aircraft and the trails they leave behind. Many people know or understand the flight patterns in their area. Commercial and private aircraft are rigorously scheduled and monitored by the FAA. The question of chemtrails arises when one or more aircraft are spotted along with a pattern of trails that has become a hallmark of what are called chemtrails, a cross or a checkerboard pattern of smoke. They might be seen in the middle of the day or at a time when people who are keen to observe closely don't normally see aircraft in their area. I personally spotted such a plane a few weeks ago in Mobile, Alabama. What struck me as unusual was the plane was accelerating upward, but unlike other aircraft one is used to seeing, it did not level out at a certain altitude and then appear to head in some direction or destination. It appeared to me to have as its sole purpose just flying around in that one area, and several miles of the blue sky were arrayed with the trails of the plane. The cross shape was apparent. It didn't make sense to me, and it made me think about chemtrails. Does that make me a bad person spreading a hoax, a conspiracy, because I wonder about something that appears unusual and other people are doing the same thing? At the very least, regardless of whether chemtrails or chemical trails are involved, it is a fact that aircraft are sometimes in the sky with no apparent destination in progress, and always with the white cross-shaped trail that linger for an hour, sometimes longer. Many people report the aircraft as unmarked. Please understand, I am a dyed-in-wool skeptic and have not been convinced of the existence of UFOs. But I am considering chemtrails, or as they are more acceptably being called, geoengineering. And yes, I understand there are people out there who take advantage of any situation and jump aboard the chemtrail controversy for money and other reasons. Just because you find a website or YouTube video on chemtrails does not mean the material they present is authentic or their intentions are good. The most convincing argument against chemtrails and in favor of contrails, condensation as opposed to chemicals, is Wikipedia. The Wikipedia article on chemtrails is strong, supported by a number of well-known individuals and organizations. There is a considerable wall of dissent against the existence of chemtrails. I keep an open mind, and I could be convinced in either direction at this point. I currently lean in direction of yes, chemtrails, and that the government of several countries are involved. What it would take to really convince me? A video from start to finish of a chemtrail process. I would want to see the planes entering the sky from a noted location. I would like to see the aircraft enter airspace, conduct the spraying, and then leave the airspace. Does anyone have one of those videos? Preston Brady III, mobiletribune.com. 16. Adoption of resolution number 12-07, a resolution of the town council of the town of Fairfax declaring Fairfax a chemtrail-free zone. I'm sorry, that's probably the chemtrails getting into my head. And there's a couple of links here. Now, in terms of a video, if you want to go to Potent News and just click on videos, you'll get to see the videos that I personally took, time-lapse videos of the airplanes in question here. You'll get to see ones which do leave a trail juxtaposed right beside ones that are not leaving trails. So you could see in the time-lapse, the ones that are not leaving trails go by like shooting stars. And the ones that are leaving trails leave trails that linger for hours, and they take up, the whole sky and block the sunlight. So even if you don't want to believe that this is toxic stuff that they're putting there on purpose to hurt us, then you still have you cannot deny that we have less sunlight now. There's a lot less sunlight, and it's due to this kind of stuff. People really need to look up more often. Just look up, because it's pretty retarded that regular sane people don't ever look up for years. And I'm not saying I'm better than you people, the people who don't look up, because for years I didn't look up either. I only found out about this around 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, but it's absolutely insane that there's still a lot of people who have no idea what this is, and who would ridicule the very idea that governments would do this. Again, our governments have been hijacked. In Canada here, our Prime Minister goes to secret elite meetings with the Bilderberg group. So if you haven't heard of that, look it up. It's been talked about a lot, even on mainstream media. This isn't, this isn't something that's never been heard of before. Maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, it would have been a lot less heard of. But now everyone knows. So if you don't know, then you're under a rock. So go look it up. Our Prime Minister is basically in bed with the other elites that are conspiring to take over the world. Simple as that. And if that last article was not enough to convince you of the reality of chemtrails, this one might help as well. It's from the Intel Hub by Alex Thomas, April 20th, 2012. It's called Chemtrail Geoengineering Lawsuit Moves Forward as Citizens Set to Provide Evidence. Al DeChico, an independent journalist and activist in Mohave County, Arizona, has spoken out and rallied against the ongoing geoengineering of our skies at various local city council meetings and other public hearings. Now, after being involved in a series of tests that proved that he had high levels of barium and aluminum in his blood, Al and a group of concerned citizens are moving forward with a lawsuit to attempt to stop these dangerous chemical trails. There's a video here that's a minute long. I'll leave that for you guys to look at. The group's Facebook page, Chemtrail Geoengineering Lawsuit, has become a sort of meeting ground for activists to provide direct evidence. Quote, this group is for those interested in filing a lawsuit for geoengineering and chemtrails that have evidence of chemtrail toxins such as barium, aluminum, strontium, and other toxins in their blood or hair, urine, soil, rainwater. We plan file a complaint in all 11 U.S. federal courts and courts abroad. We now have over 1,000 potential plaintiffs, and we are growing. Thanks to all that have joined. This is global, and similar actions may be brought in other countries. Since the group was started, we have since done more testing. Rainwater was tested and was high in aluminum and barium and strontium. There is an ongoing effort to discredit and placate the public by certain people regarding this issue. Most doctors do not test for heavy metal toxicity on patients. If they don't, I suggest a new doctor. Please help us find law firms that will take our cases. We have one so far as of 4/18/2012, April 18th, 2012. End quote. As we have heavily documented in the past, there is currently a large-scale worldwide operation taking place that involves the spraying of chemicals throughout the sky in a move to geoengineer the planet. In fact, here in the United States, there is an actual chemtrail budget, and you can click on that, that provides billions of dollars to carry out these dangerous operations. There's just one other little aspect about this global covert aerosol operation that's happening that I would like to bring to your attention that has not been touched upon in the last couple articles here, and that's Morgellons. Please go to morgellonsresearchgroup.com and learn more about that, because this these geoengineering operations aren't only about geoengineering. So there you have it. That about does it for the 5th edition of the Potent News Blast. I hope you have a fucking blast, and I'll see you next time.